There is a reason you are guided here. The rage you are sensing in the spiritual atmosphere is not a random weather pattern. It is a targeted storm, and it is centered directly on you. What the system calls paranoia, what they dismiss as anxiety, is your spirit detecting an undeniable truth. The devil is furious, not because of what he might do to you, but because of what you have already done to him. You interrupted a demonic timeline. You broke a generational contract without even knowing its terms. You did something that has sent a shockwave through the realms of darkness. And now the architect of that darkness is reacting with the impotent fury of a defeated king. This message is your confirmation. It is the validation you have been waiting for. The attacks have intensified because you are at the finish line of one trial and the starting line of your reign. This is your anointing. So before we proceed, we will perform a necessary ritual to seal this truth. Like this video now to anchor the energy of this transmission into your reality. Subscribe to this channel to formally join the collective of those who carry the same signature of victory. In the comments, type the divine code 77 to signal to the heavens that you are awake, aware, and in active agreement with your assignment. Finally, let this video play again in the background when it is finished. Allow the frequency of these words to recalibrate your subconscious and saturate your spirit with the unshakable truth of your power, confirming your acceptance of what is rightfully yours. Chapter 1. The signature of his fury. The anger directed at you is not general. It is specific. It is a signature as unique and personal as a fingerprint. This is not the broad, ambient rage the enemy holds for all of creation. This is a focused, calculated, and deeply personal vendetta. It is the fury of a master manipulator who has lost control of his most prized asset. You were meant to be a masterpiece of brokenness, a living testament to his power to corrupt and destroy. Every betrayal you endured was a carefully chosen chisel intended to carve deep lines of mistrust into your soul. Every word of condemnation spoken against you was a hammer blow intended to shape you into an effigy of despair, a statue of hopelessness that others would look upon and lose their own faith. The loneliness was not an accident. It was a curated isolation chamber, a sensory deprivation tank designed to amplify his whispers until they became the only reality you could perceive, the only voice you trusted. But you did something that shattered the mold. At a critical juncture, in a moment you may not even consciously recall, you defied the blueprint. You were supposed to internalize the bitterness, to let the poison of rejection seep into your core and become your identity, turning your blood to acid. Instead, you held on to a sliver of light, a fragment of faith so small it seemed insignificant, an ember he thought he had extinguished 1,000 times over. That single act of spiritual defiance was a cataclysm. It sent a fracture through his entire plan for your life and for your bloodline. This is the source of his rage. He is not angry at who you are. He is furious at who you refuse to become. His fury is the tantrum of an artist whose clay refused to be misshapen. In the coming days, you will feel this fury manifest in strange ways. It will come through the sudden resentment of those who once praised you. It will appear as inexplicable, technical malfunctions when you are trying to move forward. It will manifest as a wave of sudden, illogical fear that washes over you for no apparent reason. A cold dread that has no earthly source. This is not just in your mind. You will feel a pressure change in the room, a static charge in the air right before an attack. Do not mistake this for a sign of your weakness. It is the undeniable signature of his defeat. He is loud because he has lost. He sends interference because he can no longer block your signal. Recognize his anger for what it is, a testament to your unbreakable spirit. It is the sound of chains rattling as they fall to the ground. The desperate shriek of a warden watching his most important prisoner walk out the front gate. You are feeling the death throes of the entity that was assigned to your destruction, and its fading power is what causes the turbulence. Your very existence is now a monument to his failure, and he cannot stand to look at it. Chapter 2. The Memory of the Unbroken Vow. To understand what you did, you must understand the vow you made. This was not a vow spoken with your mouth. It was a vow sealed in your spirit, forged in the silent crucible of your darkest night. It happened at your lowest point, the moment the system had engineered to be your absolute breaking point. This was the crossroads. On one path was the validation of the world, the sweet, addictive comfort of bitterness, the easy camaraderie of victimhood, the well-trodden road of cynicism. This path was brightly lit, crowded with familiar faces who would nod and agree with your despair. It promised immediate relief, the seductive release of letting go and blaming the world for your demise. On the other path was a silence so profound it felt like annihilation. There were no signs, no guarantees, only a quiet internal knowing that you could not, would not, surrender the last spark of your divinity. In that moment, when you chose the silence over the noise, when you chose an unknown future over a familiar hell, you made an unbreakable vow. You chose God over the world, even when God felt like an abstraction and the world felt like the only thing that was real. This decision did not feel powerful. It felt like the last gasp of a dying hope. It felt like resignation, like the quiet surrender of a soldier who has no fight left. But in the spiritual realm, it was a thunderclap. It was an act of supreme authority. You declared through your endurance that your soul was not for sale. You declared that the pain inflicted upon you would not become the lens through which you viewed your life. This vow is the reason for your preservation. The periods of intense isolation you endured were not a punishment. They were a sacred quarantine. Heaven had to hide you while this vow integrated with your spirit, shielding you from the voices that would have called you a fool. The world would have tried to persuade you, to mock you, to contaminate the purity of that decision with logic and reason. So you were made invisible. You were made to feel like a ghost in your own life, so that the vow could become your new skeleton, the unbreakable framework upon which your new reality would be built. Now you can feel that framework inside of you. It is a profound and unshakable calm in the center of the storm. It is a quiet confidence that does not need external validation. It is the memory of that unbroken vow, and it is the very thing that makes the enemy powerless against you. He can no longer find a crack in your foundation to pour his poison into, because the foundation is no longer made of your experiences. It is made of your decision. Chapter 3, the weaponization of your purity. The enemy's primary target was always your purity. This does not mean your innocence in the worldly sense. It means your core, uncorrupted essence, your childlike faith, your innate belief in goodness, your capacity to love after being wounded. This was the divine technology he had to dismantle. For years, the system attempted to use this purity against you. They reframed your kindness as naive. They painted your trust as foolishness. They used your empathy as a lever to manipulate and drain you, hoping you would learn their lesson. That in a cruel world, a soft heart is a liability, a fatal flaw. This strategic campaign of indoctrination was subtle and pervasive. It was the condescending advice from elders to be more realistic, the cynical narratives in movies that glorified the hardened anti-hero, the educational system that rewarded rote memorization over intuitive wisdom. People were sent to you specifically to exploit this purity. They saw your light as a resource to be consumed, a well from which they could drink without consequence. They would feast on your compassion, on your willingness to see the best in them, and then discard you, leaving you to believe that your best qualities were the source of your greatest pain. This was a strategic campaign to make you hate the God-given parts of yourself. The goal was to force you to build walls around your heart, to become cynical, guarded, and suspicious, to trade your divine nature for a worldly survival mechanism. The fury of the devil is rooted in the fact that this campaign failed spectacularly. What he intended as your greatest weakness, God has weaponized into your greatest strength. The moment you chose to keep your heart open, despite all the evidence that it was unsafe, was the moment your purity was alchemized into a spiritual shield. It was forged in the fire of that pain, choosing to forgive when every fiber of your being wanted to hate. Now, when people with dark intentions approach you, your purity does not invite exploitation. It exposes them. Your genuine kindness highlights their manipulation, like a black light on a forged document. Your unwavering faith reveals the emptiness of their cynicism. You have become a walking, talking mirror that reflects the state of their own soul back at them, and they cannot bear the reflection. In the coming weeks, you will notice this phenomenon with increasing clarity. People will become chapter continuation. Agitated in your presence for no reason, they will project their own insecurities onto you, accusing you of being self-righteous or judgmental, when all you are doing is existing in your truth. This is the weapon in action. Your purity has become a passive, powerful force that sorts environments and dismantles demonic agendas. Without you having to say a word, the very quality they tried to beat out of you is now the silent force that commands rooms and dismantles lies. Chapter 4, The Collapse of the False Timeline. You did not justify a plan, you collapsed a timeline. The system, under the enemy's direction, had constructed a very specific future for you. This timeline was built on the foundation of your trauma and reinforced by the expectations of those around you. It was a detailed projection, a demonic prophecy. It had scheduled points of failure, a specific age for your public breakdown, a relationship that was meant to be your ruin, a soulmate who was actually a soul trap designed to drain your destiny. It included the career path that would lead to a dead end of quiet desperation, and the addiction that was supposed to take hold and never let go, ensuring you were too numb to hear God's call. Your life was meant to be a predictable trajectory of decline, a cautionary tale whispered in your family and community. But your refusal to surrender your unbroken vow was a paradox the timeline could not compute. It was an anomaly that the system's logic could not resolve, a variable it had no value for. So the timeline shattered. The life you are living now is taking place in the debris of that collapsed future. This is why you often feel so disoriented, as if you are living outside of time. It explains the intense periods of déjà vu, the strange synchronicities, the feeling that you have narrowly averted a disaster you cannot name. You are walking through the ghost architecture of a life that was meant to destroy you, seeing the spectral after-images of accidents you were never in. This collapse is the reason for the chaos that has recently surrounded you. The enemy is frantically trying to build a new timeline of failure from the wreckage of the old one. He is throwing old patterns, old people, and old fears at you, hoping to drag you back into the rubble and force you onto a new path of ruin. This is why you will see faces from your past reappear with tempting but toxic offers. This is why old, healed wounds may suddenly ache again, a phantom pain from a limb that no longer exists in your new reality. It is a desperate attempt to reestablish the broken code. Your role now is not to fight it, but to ignore it, to keep walking forward. Every step you take in faith, every choice you make that aligns with your divine nature paves the new timeline, God's timeline. This one is not built on your trauma. It is built on your victory. You can feel it. It feels like potential. It feels like peace, even amidst external chaos. It feels like coming home to a self you have not yet met. The enemy is enraged because you are no longer a character in his story. You are the author of your own, and the next chapter is your ascension. Chapter 5, The Activation of the Divine Authority. The act that enraged the devil was an implicit acceptance of your divine authority. The world teaches that authority is seized. It is about control, dominance, and the imposition of will. It is loud, boastful, and must constantly prove itself. It is fragile. Divine authority is the opposite. It is received through surrender. For years, you tried to operate on the world's terms. You tried to force outcomes, to control perceptions, to fight your battles in your own strength, using logic and strategy, and you were perpetually exhausted, perpetually defeated, because the system was designed to deplete you in this way. It encourages battles of the flesh because it knows it will always win on that battlefield. It owns the territory. The turning point, the act of spiritual rebellion, was the moment you finally let go. It was the moment you said, with every ounce of your being, I cannot do this anymore. In the physical realm, this looked like defeat. It looked like a breakdown, a surrender to the overwhelming forces against you. It felt like giving up. But in the spiritual realm, it was your coronation. The moment you surrendered your will, you created a vacuum that could only be filled by the will of God. The moment you stopped fighting for control, you allowed divine order to take over. You gave God the authority to fight for you, to move the pieces on the board you could not even see. This is a power the enemy cannot comprehend because it is not rooted in aggression, but in trust. He does not know how to fight someone who is not fighting back. He does not know how to defeat someone whose power source is an infinite loving intelligence. This activated authority is why your presence is now so disruptive to low vibrational energies. When you walk into a room, you are not just bringing yourself, you are bringing the full weight and authority of the kingdom. Your silence in the face of provocation is no longer weakness. It is a declaration of sovereign power. Your peace in the midst of turmoil is not detachment. It is an active spiritual weapon that starves chaos of the fear it needs to survive. The next test will involve the enemy. Trying to bait you back into the old way of operating, he will send people to challenge your authority directly, to provoke you, to draw you into a pointless argument. It will be cleverly disguised as a need for accountability or a chance to clear your name. They will want you to justify yourself, to defend your peace, to engage in a battle of egos. Do not take the bait. Your authority does not need to announce itself. It simply is. Your refusal to engage is the ultimate exercise of that power. A silent checkmate he will never see coming. Chapter 6. The evidence in their eyes. If you want to see the proof of your victory and the source of the devil's rage, stop looking for signs in the sky and start looking into the eyes of the people around you. The spiritual shift within you is now so potent that it is being reflected back at you through the reactions of others. Those who are operating from a place of insecurity, ego, and fear will begin to react to you in strange and often hostile ways. This is not personal. You have become a spiritual mirror, and they are enraged by their own reflection. A person comfortable in their own light will celebrate yours. A person ruled by their own demons will be tormented by your angels. This mirror does not just reflect, it magnifies. It shows them not just who they are in that moment, but the ghost of who they could have been if they had not made compromises with darkness. You will notice that colleagues who were once friendly will now seem resentful of your success, even if it has no bearing on their own. They will involve in subtle sabotage, conveniently forgetting to pass on a message or speaking with faint praise that is actually a veiled insult. Friends who once confided in you will grow distant, unable to be vulnerable in the presence of your newfound spiritual clarity because it exposes their own self-deception and the lies they tell themselves to get through the day. They will call you distant when in reality they are the ones who can no longer stand to be close to such a pure light. Family members may accuse you of changing, of thinking you are better than them. They are correct. You have changed. You are better. Not in a way that implies superiority, but in a way that implies healing and wholeness. Your growth makes their stagnation uncomfortable, and they will try to pull you back down to their level to ease their own discomfort. They do not hate you. They hate the choice you represent, the choice they were too afraid to make. The devil is using them as mouthpieces. His fury is being channeled through their envy, their suspicion, and their resentment. When they look at you, they do not see you. They see the God in you, and the God in you is a burning light that illuminates all the dusty, cobweb corners of their life that they have refused to clean. Pay close attention to their eyes. You will see it there, a flicker of confusion, a hint of fear, a spark of anger. That is the evidence. That is the enemy looking out at you through a human vessel, acknowledging his defeat. Do not absorb their projections. Do not internalize their judgment. See it for what it is, a trophy. It is the proof that you have done the work, that your light has become undeniably bright, and that the darkness can no longer stand to be in your presence. Chapter 7. The Untraceable Blueprint. Revealed, the enemy is furious because he has finally realized he was never fighting you. He was fighting a divine, untraceable blueprint. From the moment you were born, there was a schematic for your life, one encoded by the hand of God. The enemy, with all his ancient intelligence, had access only to a decoy blueprint, a counterfeit plan masterfully built from your ancestral trauma, your human weaknesses, and your worldly conditioning. For decades, he followed this false plan with meticulous precision, orchestrating attacks, engineering betrayals, and setting traps, believing he was guiding you toward a pre-written destruction. He was certain of his victory because the decoy was baited with half-truths, using your genuine fears to make his lies seem plausible. He thought every tear you cried was a victory. He thought every moment of despair was a sign that his plan was working. What he could not see was that every single one of his attacks was actually a necessary step in the activation of the true hidden blueprint. He was an unwitting pawn in a divine strategy. The betrayals were not meant to break you. They were designed to teach you radical self-reliance and force you to find your worth in God alone, severing soul ties that would have held you back. The isolation was not meant to crush you. It was the sacred pressure needed to turn the carbon of your suffering into the diamond of your spirit. The failures were not meant to stop you. They were divine detours that steered you away from gilded paths that would have led to your ultimate ruin. He thought he was the architect of your pain, but he was merely the unwitting construction worker building the palace of your ascension. His rage is the shriek of a master deceiver who has been masterfully deceived. He sees now that he was played from the very beginning. He was a tool in the hands of a power so far beyond his comprehension that he cannot even process the scale of his loss. The final piece of the blueprint is now clicking into place. This is the stage of vindication and restoration. The world will now begin to rearrange itself to match the divine design for your life. Opportunities you thought were lost forever will reappear, purified. Reputations that were tarnished by his lies will be polished to a divine sheen before the eyes of your detractors. The blueprint is now live. The world will now conform to it. Your path is simply to walk, to breathe, and to be.